Today we have Rebecca Claeys with us. She's a bachelor-educated registered nurse and holds credentials as a certified professional coder and a certified program integrity professional. She has received numerous accolades for her work during COVID. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Laurie.
Yes, I'm excited about today because first and foremost, we're going to be talking about burnout and how individuals are feeling this way more and more. I'm definitely noticing this with my clients. People are just feeling really drained. Another thing I notice is the dread people feel. It can get pretty extreme, some of the things I've heard individuals express when talking about burnout.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's really rough, especially coming out of the pandemic. I think there's very widespread burnout. Those who were working really hard during the pandemic response were definitely feeling burnout, even if they're masking right now and showing up daily with a smile on their face and doing their hard work. They're still in it. As a leader, I hear from team members who are struggling with burnout a lot of the same things your clients are saying. They're dreading coming to work, not because they don't want to do the work, but because they're just so intrinsically, existentially tired. And it's hard to figure out how to break that cycle and be themselves again.
What a lot of information says out there right now is, okay, get your self-care time, make sure you're doing this, you're doing that. And Rebecca, your take on burnout is really interesting, and it's a different way to look at it.
Cleopatra Seeds is the company that I founded actually to hold the Soul Alchemy Cycle. The Soul Alchemy Cycle is what I call the process that I've developed to work out of burnout and develop a framework that not only gets you out of burnout, but helps you stay out of burnout, because it's a completely different view of how you're living your life. And that goes back to my take on burnout. So when I was dealing with that deep, dark, depressive spiral of burnout that I couldn't dig myself out of after the COVID response, I had tried the books, I had tried the podcasts, I had tried the TED Talks and all of everything that you could find. I tried coaching, all of those different things that maybe help for a couple of days. If you take a vacation, work is waiting for you in tenfold when you get.
Yeah, tenfold for sure.
It's just like piling up, ready to fall in an avalanche on you, and it pulls you right back down into that burnout cycle. What I discovered as I was evaluating them is that all of them focus on reducing stress. And that's valid because in burnout, you're dealing with a lot of stress. But that's not the root cause. It's a symptom of burnout. And when we're looking at it from like a medical perspective, my background as a registered nurse, I think in nursing process. When we're treating a symptom, the only reason we're treating a symptom is because we don't have an adequate treatment for the root cause. So it's supportive care. We got to hope that the patient is able to actually use their immune system to pull them out of it, and we give them support along the way. That's how we're treating burnout as a society right now.
Yes. Rebecca, can I pause and just restate that, because so very important. The idea that we are just trying to treat a symptom of burnout versus the root cause, the actual source of it, is a bit counterintuitive to your medical background, right? That doesn't quite make sense to just focus in on the symptom, unless, like you said, there is no way to solve the main core root cause of the issue.
Like with COVID, we didn't have a treatment for a really long time. So what were we doing? We were treating symptoms. We were making sure that people had the ability to breathe. We were controlling fevers where we could. We were supporting system and organ failures where we could, whenever we could, to try to keep the person alive long enough that their immune system could fight off the virus. Until we started getting actual treatments, we couldn't do anything else. We had to provide that supportive care. That's what we're doing with burnout right now, because we don't have a treatment for that root cause.
Rebecca, you went through this, right? Sounds like you went through this during COVID.
I did.
I know working with a lot of medical professionals, that was one of the hardest times in a lot of medical providers' lives, because what we were talking about a bit earlier is there's not this endpoint. I wasn't like, oh, now we can have a break. It was nonstop, going and going. I still see those effects from those individuals that I'm working with. I'm assuming that's the same for you, is seeing those effects.
I definitely see that in my work areas. I also had the privilege of actually working directly on the COVID-19 response with the State Emergency Operations Center. And I see it with a lot of those people that I worked with as well. It is definitely much wider. And it comes down to the people who are experiencing this. They are people who are working and committed to a larger cause than themselves. Whether it's in medicine, whether it is supporting the public service of any kind, those are the people who are most likely to experience this.
What are those reasons why somebody that's job that focuses in on the helping, assisting community, why burnout would be harder for those individuals?
Sure. So before I get to that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the root cause, because I think that'll make it easier for me to explain. As I was going through my nursing process to understand my own burnout and how I could actually treat it and get out of it, because I really wanted to feel like myself again. I was missing who I was. What I discovered was that I had tied my own personal sense of worth to how much I was producing. And I wasn't the only one. My goal was to get back to being able to produce more. And that's actually one of the targets of existing burnout treatment, is getting the patient back to a level of productivity. But I had tied my worth to that. If I wasn't producing, I wasn't worthy as a human being.
I produce, therefore I'm worthy. So that can be very dangerous, because number one, that puts you in a spot of always needing to perform and achieve more and more.
Yep.
And if you're not going in that path, then you're having all of these negative reactions to it.
Yeah.
It's not something really sustainable.
And there's never a finish line, ever.
Yeah.
The goalposts are always shifting. And for those in public service, getting back to that point, we're not just producing for ourselves. There are people depending on us to produce. It's not just our worth now that is tied to our production. It's potentially people's lives that are tied to our production. If we're not producing, people can die. And that's a lot of pressure.
It's an intense amount of pressure. And also something I do here, if I even take a break or reduce some of that, this is just going to put more work on the other people. If not, this is going to affect the people that I help. And helping can be life or death. It can be potentially helping someone's life in general be better, or potentially, quote unquote, worse if you aren't there.
Yeah, it's like being trapped in molasses.
Yes. And then what does somebody do in that spot? Right?
So I can't say how everybody does. I can say how I did. What I decided was I needed a different approach. I needed to stop tying my value to my productivity and find something else to tie it to. And I remembered back to something that I heard as a child, but it wasn't something that came up frequently for me. You are a human being, not a human doing. And that was a pivot point for me. I'm a human being. I'm not a human doing. I exist. I don't exist to do. I exist to exist, which means that I have a purpose simply in existing. I was born with it, right? Nobody can take that away from me. It's mine because I exist. Okay, so then what is that purpose? We had a lovely speaker come and do an all-staff meeting named Dr. Jasmine Zapata, and she talked about a purpose board. And a purpose board was similar to a vision board, but it was all about the whys of what she did.
Yeah.
And that struck me. I've always been a why person, but I've never asked why about myself until that point.
That must have been an incredible shift to first go, I'm here and I'm worthy because I am here, versus I'm worthy because I'm doing or producing. And then having that moment where you're listening to somebody ask a different question.
Exactly. Exactly. We learn from all of the things around us if our ears are open. We hear a lot that we should claim this I am enough. It's everywhere, right? I am enough. But
Right.
how do you believe that you
Right.
are enough? You can't until you let go of the old mindset. You can't until you decide that your worth is not tied to what you make or what you do or how much you do.
Yeah. That process is different for a lot of people. That process of untethering from that belief can be, for some people, maybe not that challenging. Maybe they're ready to say, yeah, this frame of reference isn't working well for me. But other people, it might take a lot more time.
We're all at different points on our journeys. For some people, this is a really brand new concept. Other people, they've known this all along and they're ready to let go. And then there's everybody in between. It takes time. None of this is an overnight fix. It's all something that you have to work on, and you have to work on it consistently. Getting rid of old habits is really hard, especially when they're habits that
Mhm.
you've had for decades. Everybody around you likely has the same issue.
Yeah.
They're all tying their productivity to their worth because it's a societal issue. We're trained in this as children. We get awards for reading a certain number of books. I don't know if you had the Book It program as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
I loved reading as a child.
Yeah.
Absolutely adored it. And I could go through books like nothing. Would I have read as many books as I did in second grade if there wasn't a pizza incentive involved? Probably not. Did
Right.
actually impact my reading ability to read all of those 10-page books so that I could mark them off as having read a book? No. But it was volume, it was productivity. I got my pizza.
Yeah. I remember those days, and I remember being very excited for that pizza. And you're right. It becomes not what's actually coming from the books, but just reading the books in itself as the main focus, which
Yeah.
takes away from actually what happens for most people when they start to love reading, which is being interested and connected to this book, or this book is so interesting. Now I'm sitting here and reading it and lost track of time. What is somebody actually going towards? It might just be, let's pick the shortest books, which I probably did, like thinking about Book It, or ones that are maybe easier because the goal is quantity versus quality.
Exactly. As kids get older, kids are praised for being on the honor roll. It becomes tied to their identity. It becomes part of their value that they are now getting these honor roll certificates or breaking an athletic record and having their name up on a board. These are ways that we celebrate each other. And it also becomes tied to our individual worth. It's a societal issue. That's why we don't have a treatment for it, because it's a societal issue. It's too big for a full treatment. There'd be too many impacts to try to
Right.
treat it at the core. That's why it
Right.
becomes an individual issue. We're each responsible for our own being and our own existence.
Yeah, shifting it into that, right? Like that it becomes more on that individual. Yeah, it's not what we would want, but I also think too, what you're doing makes it possible for that to start to be more of a societal shift. I have this sense that things will be shifting with the
Yes.
next generation under me. It does definitely seem like there's a shift in what matters to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Experiences tend to be mattering more to individuals versus stuff. So I'm very hopeful for that. What I also see is the generations ahead making those blanket statements that, oh, they're just lazy, they're not showing up. Maybe there's truth to that. With every good is some negative piece to it. But I also think that shift has been a long time coming. There's not really a real true good reason why we are all working the amount we are working. It doesn't seem like it really makes much sense, especially if we're thinking of the technology, right? That was supposed to make things easier. It makes some things easier for sure, but it does make that stress even more difficult to move through because you're not just feeling that at work then, you're feeling it at home when you get an email ping or a text from a coworker definitely makes our whole self feel that work stress even more.
And it's not just the work stress either. The stress comes in from all different angles. It's productivity at home. How many sports can you get your kids enrolled in? Can you be the super mom who gets them to 6 different sports in 3 days? Are they doing piano lessons and dance lessons and soccer and track and football?
Yes, that's
There's
exactly what's happening. And untying yourself from those expectations can be really challenging, and it takes pausing a bit. Okay, what's the purpose of it? Is it to enrich their life? Is it to give them skills in endurance and tenacity? Or is it to create the superstar athlete that, ties their worth to that particular avenue, which isn't an everlasting one?
Is it something that is intrinsic to how you are classifying your worth because that's what society has told you need to do?
It's a great question.
One of the things that I
Yeah.
really focus on in the Soul Alchemy Cycle is what matters to you as an individual. And this is a really hard question. It's actually much harder than it sounds, but getting down to the core of it is really challenging because in order to get down to it, you have to actively divorce yourself of all of your responsibilities, including to your children, including to your work, including to your partner, including to any clubs that you have decided that you're going to be a part of and support, including to your friend. You have to take those and push them all completely out of the picture and not consider them at all to figure out what really matters to you. And that's not something we're
Yeah.
used to doing either.
I think we see ourselves so much within other people's expectations, other people's desires, that separating ourselves from that would be a really challenging task.
Yeah.
How do we really feel?
One of the things that I've done in the Soul Alchemy Cycle was I've gone through a process of looking at what are the artifacts of you? What are the things that you've collected throughout your life that are subconsciously important to you? And what meaning do they hold? Why are you holding on to them? Why do you move them from house to house or apartment to apartment in the same box every time that's now falling apart because it's been through like 5 or 6 moves? You never open it, but they're there. And if your house burned down, you would be devastated because you lost them. What are those things? Why do they matter? Are they attached to a person or an event? And so the worksheets that I've developed, which I have worksheets available for free on my website that walk through some of these exercises to help people identify what is important to them as an individual and help them find what their personal purpose is, their descriptor of themselves. Once you have that identified, you can start identifying your core values. Those values are what create your purpose statement. And once you have that purpose statement, you can use it as a guide against every decision, every act. You can use it to help decide small things or big things. Should I take a promotion or not? Should I be looking for another job? Or are there small changes I can make in this one?
Yeah, so that purpose statement really is then a compass. What am I really trying to do with my life? What am I really feeling fulfilled in? And not just haphazardly grabbing onto things because they're there and in front of you, but being really intentional.
And so tying your worth then to whether you are in alignment with your purpose. That's how you keep from falling back into burnout. Because it's no longer important how much you're producing or what you're producing. Your success is tied to, are you in alignment with yourself? You have complete control over it. Nobody can move the goalposts for you.
I want to pause in on that a bit because that would change everything, right? To me, that would change everything if you aren't necessarily thinking of what's my checklist of things that I need to do so that I, for instance, for me, like feeling as though I did everything and I didn't drop a ball, right? Shifting it into the only goal is how much am I aligned to my actual purpose? that I selected, that I decided. It wouldn't be an up and down feeling then of, did I do it today? Did I do it yesterday? Did I meet my task list? Did I meet all the goals for this week? Did I make sure that I took the kids this place and that place and listened to them and was attentive and all of those things? It becomes just the one.
The thing is, when you are living in alignment with your purpose, you begin living in your own rhythm. It's a slower, easier life. You start noticing things more around you, start enjoying things around you more. You become a clearer individual, and the productivity follows. Productivity itself isn't the enemy. We live in a productivity-driven world. Stuff still has to get done. You still have to have a job to put food on the table, and you have to get things done to keep that job. But staying in alignment with who you are, that productivity will follow, and it'll come easier because what you're doing makes sense with your core values. You don't have to work so hard for it. You're also not so focused on it happening. It just happens.
So it's almost in that flow state where time seems a little different. The energy that we're using feels less.
It's softer.
It's softer. Yeah.
And that's not to say that you can't get a big energy burst and do a whole bunch of stuff all at once because you're excited about something. But on average, it's just softer. You're not tense all the time.
So Rebecca, to help our listeners a little bit more, sometimes it's helpful to give an example or something specific. And maybe you could use yourself or somebody that you've worked with to see how this actually can help and work for somebody.
Yeah. So the first thing I would suggest is do a little exercise for yourself. Practice ignoring all of your other responsibilities and think about one thing that's important to you and why. Just start thinking about what that value might be and incorporate that into your choices. Is this choice in alignment with that value? Now, this is not immediate work. It's going to take some time. You're going to probably want to do it over and over to get really good at it. Anything worth the value is going to take practice. Remember that you are a human being, not a human doing. So prioritize your obligations to yourself above your obligations to others. If you need a sick day, take a sick day and don't feel bad about it. If you need a well day because you're feeling really good and you want to get outside and enjoy the day, take a well day. Take your paid leave. It's there for a reason. Other people will figure things out. The team will figure things out. That's why they're a team. The second thing is practice saying no more often. That's really easy for me to say, but sometimes if you have a supervisor who is not friendly to hearing no, don't just say no. Say, I have this much on my plate right now. This has filled my capacity for what I'm able to get done right now. If you have something that is a higher priority, what should I put to the side so that I can get it done? What can I hand to somebody else? Don't take everything on yourself. You're a human being, not a human doing.
Yeah. I love that because there's definitely those stuck points for people. First, that idea, I know for a lot of individuals to say, oh, I'm going to take a day, a sick day or a well day. First reaction, no, I have never done that in my life, maybe. Yep. Or like you said, what happens then? Everybody's going to be stuck with all my stuff. They will be okay. They will be okay. Yes.
They'll figure it out.
And then that idea of saying to your boss or employer, no, can be very scary. So I like that tool as well of saying, you're really being upfront and honest.
Yeah.
This is taking up all my time and there's not much room for something else. If you're being given an extra task, what is the most important thing? So that I know, so that I'm not feeling as though I have to do all the things all at the same time.
Exactly.
And sometimes you need that actual outside help because you might not have all the information as far as what's the priority.
Exactly. And having that open conversation with your supervisor is also going to open conversations down the line
Hmm.
and keep you from falling into the trap of snowballing your assignments. So doing it once
Right.
is really scary, and you can do it.
You are right, though. It's a conversation that can potentially shape the future relationship to yourself and to work.
Yes. And if you're a leader, be open to those conversations. Listen to what your team is telling you and respond appropriately to them. Let them know that it's a safe place to do that so that they come to you more often. Also, if you're a leader, model this for them. If they see you doing it, they're going to know that you're a safe person to do this with.
Do people have a reaction to that idea? If they're a leader, I need to show them that I'm available at all times, that I'm working really hard. How do you deal with that when somebody comes with that?
I've gone through this as a leader, and it's really hard to not be always on for them because you want to feel protective of your team. You want to be there always for them. And it is so much more effective to model the behavior for them. When they see you doing it, they know they have permission to do it. If they don't see you doing it, they're not going to do it. So build the culture where it's okay. It's up to you as the leader to set that tone.
Yeah. It makes me think of my practice at Shoreside. We have a smaller practice, and that idea is what we would like our culture there to be because we're all therapists. We all want to help at our full capacity. And it doesn't actually mean how many clients can you see. We actually have that so ingrained in our culture that if somebody's there a little bit later, seeing maybe more clients than they're used to, we will tease, right? It's everybody's would suffer, not just the therapists, but the clients. We are, as a therapist, we are that instrument. So if we're tired, if we're burnt out, if we're feeling like I don't care anymore, how's that helping, right?
You can't be
No.
present for them. You can't give them the help they need in that
Yes.
environment.
I like that idea of recognizing really the value in that leadership as far as what kind of culture am I really creating? What's
Yes.
going to actually be something where people are, number one, going to want to stick around? How do you have people stick around? And it's usually based on what the culture is and are they feeling burnt out? Are they feeling like they are aligned with the place that they're at,
Right.
you know?
And people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. If you're looking to keep people around, you want to create that culture that people are going to want to stay in. You want to not only create it, you want to maintain it. You must model behavior in order to maintain the culture.
Yeah. What would you say people tend to notice as they're doing work with you? What are other things that people tend to notice?
A lot of stuff that crops up for people are inner child things. We talked a little bit about how we start learning these things as children. And I noticed this myself as I was working through all of this. And I talk about it a little bit in my book about how my creativity had been stuffed away on a shelf, hidden behind a whole lot of emotion. But the creativity was up there because it wasn't marketable. It wasn't something that I could sell as a skill. I could sell typing. I could sell my
Mhm.
secretarial skills. I could sell my mathematical skills. I could sell just about anything else. But creativity was not one of those things. Questions, asking why was not a marketable skill. But it's so important. Once I started digging through all of these emotions and being willing to get uncomfortable and dig through the emotions, then I started feeling that coming back to me. I started feeling more fully myself. So, not just the I'm myself, I can get back to being productive. I felt more like me, fully rounded, firm in myself, me. Pieces weren't missing anymore because I allowed them to come back to me. doing this work. And I've heard that from several of my clients as well.
Yeah. And what a beautiful transition, right? And one that's unique as well, because that looks so different for so many different people. One of the things too with mental health is that there's often times where we are disconnected from ourselves. And I think in general, we are continuing to move towards that in our world. And to think about it in that way of bringing yourself back to you versus trying to create a whole new being, a whole new system, it makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense in the additional area of self love and self confidence and self care because you are honoring yourself enough to come back to yourself
Yeah.
where you're not trying to escape different parts of you. This doesn't fit in this role. So I'm going to put that here and not look at it for years and years. And just like anything, you put it aside, it starts to die. It does. That's how our brains work. I do like that idea of coming towards yourself. It's not making up something new. It's figuring out what's been there the whole time and what have you been putting aside.
Yeah, exactly. And I love seeing people come back into themselves. And as a leader, again, this is something that I really enjoy watching happen in my team. I love seeing my team coming fully into themselves because when they do, I now have a powerhouse of diversity. I have more identities at a table. I have more experience at a table informing how we're doing our work. If people are hiding pieces of themselves because they feel like they have to, I don't get to incorporate all of the information that identity can bring into the work that we're doing that can help other people. I end up making mistakes because I don't have information. And those mistakes can really hurt people too. I don't want to hurt people. I want to help them. Getting my team into the fullness of them and getting them comfortable bringing the fullness of them to that workspace is really beautiful. A lot of the things that focus on humans just make business sense. It's almost like when you take care of human beings and don't treat them like machines, they end up doing a whole lot of good things for you. And it doesn't cost you that much money. Isn't it funny how that works?
It is. It is. A lot of times there are those paradoxes where we think things need to go in this way to produce this. But typically when we pull back, when we yield, when we pause, that's when real movement can happen. But it takes some trust for sure to be able to do that, to be able to pause. And maybe thinking of burnout as a signal to do that might be helpful. Hey, this is a sign. This is a sign that the next step should be focusing in on you and what you actually want and what you're aligned with. Rebecca, I heard those steps, right? Things that people can do right away to start implementing what you're sharing today. The first is really to be checking in on what they really want, separate from other people and other things. The second is saying no more frequently and having some of those conversations, basically the potential to say no.
And then the third really is leaders model it.
Could you share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is www.cleopatrasseeds.com. And you can find my book on that website. It's available in both hardcover and paperback. There is also a companion workbook available on that website. It includes all of the exercises that are in the free worksheets, plus a few extras and some extra fun little details that were included in there. There is lots of information on the website about how to contact me if you're interested in various services or if you would like to have me come speak at an event.
Awesome. Yes, and those worksheets can be really helpful. So if anything, one step would be to get a worksheet, download it. It's free. It's a good way to get started. on this journey. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
Take care.
You too.